Fitbit's buying Pebble, but what does that mean for the future of smartwatches?
And will Amazon's push into supermarket shopping pay off? Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel.
Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined by a man who went to the James T. Kirk School of Acting, Adam Turner. Adam, what's new in tech?
Microsoft is reportedly preparing to have yet another crack at the smartphone market, with the Surface phone perhaps due to hit the shelves as early as 2017. The phone follows in the footsteps of the Surface Pro tablets and will work with Windows 10 peripherals. Microsoft obviously hopes that they'll have more luck than they did with Windows Mobile and Windows Phone when it comes to making up ground against Apple and Android devices.
Rumours suggest that Samsung may plan to outdo Apple in the dropping interfaces game, with the current spin of the rumour mill suggesting that the Galaxy S8 will not only emit a headphone jack, but also the home button, in favour of a fully digital touch sensor with fingerprint reading built in.
Lego Batman is coming to US cinemas in January, but Australians will need to wait almost 7 weeks before it reaches local theatres, in a move that's certain to drive piracy. Back in 2014, Village Roadshow's head honcho Graham Burke vowed to keep Australian release dates in line with the US after the 8-week delay on the first Lego movie cost somewhere between $3.5 and $5 million in sales.
Apple is reportedly negotiating with movie studios to allow cinema-release movies to be hired within a week or two of their big screen debut via iTunes. They won't be cheap, with touted prices suggesting a $50 price point or thereabouts, but that could be quite cost-effective depending on the number of viewers you've got. So Adam, lots of rumours in the news as we kind of wait to see the products that are expected to be announced in 2017, what with it being the tail end of 2016. And I mean, first up in the news there, of course, we had Microsoft with this seemingly never-ending Surface phone rumour. Well,
it's not a rumour that they're going to do something else. They keep saying quite clearly that they haven't given up on the phone space. But as you say, the details are still sketchy as to what they do and when they do. You and I both said that, we're quite impressed with the Surface Pro range and they've done well there. So it would be silly, I think, not to kind of build on that branding and that base. But when Windows Mobile kind of died out like the dinosaurs and Windows Phone just didn't go anywhere, they really need to do something a bit different.
They do, and I think if they want to build on that Surface goodwill, they've really got to knock it out of the park, and that is going to be difficult because, of course, everyone else is iterating, which, of course, brings us to the Samsung rumours doing the rounds. Looks as though they're likely to drop the headphone jack, and, of course, Apple copped a lot of flack for doing the same. But if Samsung does it, I think that's pretty significant because between Apple and Samsung, that's, depending on which market you're in, anywhere from 75 to 95% of the sales are those two brands alone. Yeah. And they're the only guys who make any money. So if they do it, probably everyone else will follow suit.
Yeah, I'm not so fussed about getting rid of a physical button, although you're now always in the danger. At least a physical button will always physically move. The fact that if phone crashes, you need something physical to do resets and stuff like that. So that's a little bit scary, but it's the headphone jack thing that annoys me and I think annoys a lot of people, and they just don't seem to care. And like the whole, here's a MacBook with one USB port. It's almost like they're sitting around laughing, thinking, how far can we push people before they actually push back?
I guess that remains to be seen. With Apple reportedly negotiating with the movie studios for, cinema release movies in your home, is this something you reckon you'd spend money on?
Yeah, maybe, because it does frustrate me that I go to hire a movie and it says, no, sorry, you can't hire this movie, you have to buy it because it hasn't been out for long enough. And that's one of the reasons why I like jumping between movie stores. One of the reasons why I like to hire movies from the US store is because the movies are available to rent sooner. I'm still paying for them, I'm not stealing them, but I'm bending the rules because I'm not waiting the full length of the window between the release dates. How much more I would pay to do that, I don't know. $50 sounds a little steep, but it would be nice to see them moving in that direction because every hurdle that you put up is one thing that makes it easier for more people to justify piracy, and some people would probably find it easier to go and steal it than do what I do and actually just get into another app store. So anything they can do to make it easier for people to do the right thing, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the thing is that they're intending this to compete with cinemas more than with that home rental or buy market.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting one. I seem to always have the bad luck of having some jerk talking behind me in the cinema. And when you
sorry, man, we got to start going to different cinemas. Sorry about
clearly we do. But when you add up the cost of taking a family to a cinema, $50 is actually not that much for a cinema movie. That'd be a fairly cheap set of tickets, really. So it could work for them, but you do run into those issues of those big cinema movies, your big tentpole films that I think work best when you do have that massive screen. And even if you've got a home theatre set up, unless your surname is, Packer or Reinhardt, you're not going to have a cinema screen as big as your local cinema does.
Exactly.
So, I'll wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah.
But, of course, that presumes that we're actually allowed to see these movies, because Village Roadshow is at it again with the Lego Batman movie. What are they thinking?
I don't know. I don't know whether there's some licensing agreement or whether it's just, we don't think people will turn up at the cinemas on that day. They're holding it out until the 30th of March or something. I'm not sure how close that is to Easter and whether they're going for the Easter market. But they said last time, we won't make that mistake again. It's hard to feel sorry for these people when they just don't seem to learn.
And it's nuts, because all of the merchandising, which of course drives this, because all of the Lego movies are tools to sell Lego, all of the merchandising of that stuff, because that's produced globally, will hit stores in January, which happens to be in school holidays when kids are going to want to go and see this movie.
Yeah.
It's just, I kind of can get the idea that you might hold back the odd family film that comes out in the middle of a school term, because you might not do quite as well out of that specifically. But when it's in the middle of the summer holidays and people want to get out of the heat and into a nice air-conditioned cinema, why wouldn't you go for it? It boggles my mind. It really does.
Yeah. People are standing at the local cinema saying, "Shut up and take my money. I want to see this movie." It's like what I was talking about before. When you put hurdles in the way, it's like, okay, well, I'll go and get it somewhere else. So, Alex, speaking of rumours, we spoke last week about the rumour that Fitbit was buying Pebble. More than a rumour now. What's going on?
Yeah, Fitbit has bought Pebble. And this doesn't mean that they've bought a big warehouse full of rocks. And it doesn't equally, though, mean that they've bought a big warehouse full of smartwatches that they want to sell to people, because the good news here, I suppose, if you're a Pebble employee, because they've been losing money hand over fist, is you might have a new job. The bad news, if you're a Pebble aficionado, is that there's no new watches, and there won't be. They've actually said, we're out of the hardware game. Fitbit were buying them for the software and for some of the IP. So, no more software updates. If you backed the most recent Kickstarter, unless you were on the Pebble 2, because apparently they did ship some of those out to people, but if you backed the Pebble Time 2 or the Core, they're going to refund those. That's kind of interesting in a Kickstarter sense, because you don't always have to do that. But I guess Fitbit doesn't really want to tick off that loyal audience that much, and for it, it's a million or so. It's not a tiny sum of money, but it's probably quite goodwill.
Yeah.
But Pebble as a brand is basically dead from here. And look, I will admit, it actually makes me sad, because I really like my Pebble. I've got a Kickstarter Pebble, the original Kickstarter Pebble. It still works. It still lasts for basically a week, which for a device of that age is exceptional. But for a smartwatch especially is truly exceptional.
Yeah.
You can get some fitness band watch things that get close. So Fitbit's own Blaze, for example, can do kind of 3 to 4 days, maybe 5 days if you're lucky, but that's a much more limited device. The Pebble did a lot more, and it did it while conserving battery power, and I thought that was actually very, very cool. And of course, they also get to be the pioneers in the space. They're the Apple Newton in this space, and now they're gone.
Yeah.
And this raises this bigger question of where smartwatches are generally going, because in the same time frame, Lenovo, who own Motorola, have said that they're not going to do an updated Moto 360 watch to coincide with the next release of Android Wear. That's not a huge vote of confidence, and it leaves a massively kind of fractured space. You've got Apple Watch, Samsung just brought out its Gear S3, and you've got a few other Android Wear makers like Huawei, for example, but they're really, that whole category just seems to be stagnating. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Well, I think we have to face the fact that smartwatches are the answer to a problem that nobody had. That really there are very niche uses for them. Some people probably find them incredibly useful, but they're not that the next smartphone or even the next tablet where once you owned one, you went, yeah, I got a million things for uses for this, or you could watch someone else and go, yes, I can see how I need one of them. A smartwatch is just, people don't need them. They've got to come up with something else. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see whether Fitbit takes the Pebble technology and tries to make more, put the e-ink screens, because that idea, as you said, a smartwatch that lasts for a week perhaps makes it more feasible in some circumstances. But I think they've got to sit down and fundamentally look at the smartwatch category if they want it to get beyond niche.
Well, look, I don't know that it's. I think I sort of disagree with your, answer to a question nobody was asking. In that, I think there was a very clear answer for the smartwatch, and it was one that Pebble answered straight away, and it was notifications.
Yes,
it was basically being able to look at your wrist and go, yeah, that's an email I can ignore. Don't need to stress that SMS. Oh, that person's calling. I need to take that. Oh, that person's calling. No, they can get stuffed. That stuff Pebble did beautifully out the gate. Everyone else does pretty darned well. And the problem is no one has come up with that next step, that next killer application. Yeah. Yes, they do fitness tracking. Yes, they do somewhat iffy heart rate tracking. Yes, you can get apps on it if you're looking at a Tizen-based Gear S3 or an Apple Watch. But as yet, they're really clunky ways to do the same stuff you already do on your phone, or they just launch the phone app anyway. So as yet, no one's yet jumped that gap. It's a bit like, I think, at this point, it's a bit like going from the old school feature phones to the smartphone. The old school feature phones could do a lot of the stuff, in fact, that we do on smartphones. You could do email on an old school feature phone.
Yeah.
You could do all sorts of messaging.
You could take photos and
But it was clunky and it was horrible and it really didn't work all that well and it wasn't a good use case or user scenario.
Yeah.
And smartwatches are kind of there. And what I think we need is that kind of jump into, here's the next killer thing that you're going to need or want to do. And I say that as someone, I wear a smartwatch every single day. I can't imagine myself not doing that. I'm someone who's slightly OCD about watches, so I always want to have a watch on me, even though I'm typically carrying anywhere between 2 to 5 phones that can tell me the time as well. But I like wearing a smartwatch as well. But I think I agree with you in one sense, in that I recognise that, I'm probably a bit of a niche case. I
think what you're saying is right now we have the Palm Trio 750s of smartwatches and the Nokia communicators and the iMate Jazz Jams and all those intermediary things that we're waiting for basically the iPhone to just come along and everyone to go, wow, okay, that's what we were waiting for. And Apple's smartwatch is not the iPhone of smartwatches that it hoped it would be, or the iPod really. We're waiting for the iPod of smartwatches. And I don't think Apple's nailed it. I don't think anybody's nailed it yet.
And the fact that you can roll off all those truly ancient phone names just from memory proves that both of us have been doing this way too long.
But we both tested them. We've both seen this happen. It's a little bit of the advantage of having a few grey hairs is you've seen other devices, other categories go through this, and it does take a while. It was a few years of that that thing with smartphones. We know the phones we've got aren't doing it right. We're trying a few things and we'll sort of hone the ideas and we'll get there. And then Apple, who, as some people said, should have stuck to their knitting, kind of came out of left field and said, hey, we'll build a phone. So maybe there is someone out in the wings watching now, ready to pounce on the smartwatch space that is not necessarily somewhere that we would expect it to come from.
So Adam, I hear Amazon's opening supermarkets. Does this mean that if this journalism thing doesn't work out for me, I can get a job as a checkout operative?
Not necessarily, because being Amazon, that
was my plan B.
Being Amazon, they want supermarkets without no checkout people. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. At the moment, they're only talking about it for the US. I think it's gone more past the concept stage. They're actually talking about opening some next year. They still haven't told us what's going on in Australia. We're still waiting for them to officially launch Amazon Prime Video that they kind of unofficially launched a couple of weeks ago. So we don't know what we're getting. But their whole idea in the US is that you will be able to walk into their special supermarket, swipe your phone as you walk in so it knows that it's you. It'll track you with a bazillion cameras and microphones and everything else as you walk around the store.
Cameras which may have been built in Brazil as well, just so they are Brazilian cameras.
Yes. Watch you pick up an apple, put it in your bag and go, oh, you bought an apple. Watch you pick up a pear, look at it and put it back down and go, oh, no, you didn't buy that. And somehow keep track of everything you've bought, and then you just walk out and it automatically adds it to your bill. having seen them try to do stuff here, we hate, in Australia, people hate being forced into the self-service aisle because they feel like, I came to a supermarket, you're putting someone out of a job who could be putting stuff in my bag, or they're just the grumpy, oh, why the hell should I be doing this when someone else should be doing it? But that's because there's a legacy experience of this is what I believe a supermarket should be like. This is what I've grown up with. Amazon doesn't have that because they're coming in fresh, so to speak. It could work, but I could just see people trying to scam it. If this was in Australia, I could see people sitting out the front, just scratching their chin, thinking, "How am I going to steal that apple?"
The theft spoilage issue is a really complex one to overcome. I like the idea, and I think in some ways it makes sense because, a bit like what we were talking about with the movie stuff, it removes that friction point. People don't like the self-service checkouts, not because they're largely completely incapable of using it. There's always that one thing.
There's always one. And standing in front of me, yeah.
Absolutely. I hire them to stand there, as you know. But people don't dislike it for that reason. They dislike it because it's cumbersome. They dislike it because it's, please weigh that item again. Unexpected item on the baggage shelf.
God, yes.
All that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, this removes all of that. This basically says, look, just go in, pick up what you want, walk out. And we'll deal with all the money stuff later. And as long as it works, as long as it is actually as frictionless as Amazon says it can be, then that's great. I mean, I think that is actually probably the future of how this stuff has to work. Now, obviously, yes, if you work in current supermarket retail, it's very bad news because whilst they will undefinitely need store stuff, there will be people
I was going to say, they have to have someone standing on the door, stock the shelves.
Clean up. Or deal with queries.
Spill in aisle
Amazon
5.
Being Amazon, it would not surprise me if they hadn't patented a few robots to act to restock shelves and just, go Zamboni style down the aisles to clean up. But they will need a few people, but nowhere near as many. They're very good at logistics. I mean, this is part of why Amazon is Amazon.
That's what they do. Yeah.
What really interests me with this, though, is that this is also a really strong plan. I don't know that enough people have really thought about this. It's a really strong play into gathering all sorts of marketing data.
Oh, yeah.
Because the way Amazon's got a couple of patents around this, and the way they all work and lodge together is this idea that basically when you go into the store, as they've suggested, you would scan an Amazon ID, or you'd say to the store, right, this is me and here's my Amazon account. And then they track you with cameras and they track you with microphones. And potentially, I guess, they might track you with an app if perhaps you're required to have that running while you're in the store or something like that. And all this time, they're gathering all this data about you. They're recording what you're saying. They're looking at what you pick up and what you put back.
And what you just stand there and look at for a little while and then walk away.
Absolutely. And even if you don't end up buying the stuff, even if you pick the pair up and put it down, that's marketing data to them.
Yep.
That's marketing data where they can go, well, they consider pairs, but what was wrong with that pair? Why didn't they buy that pair? Was the price wrong? Was it the wrong shade? Was it perhaps a bit bruised? Should we reduce the price? All of this is incredibly valuable stuff.
Why did they stop in the birth control section and just look around for a little while? Or, why did they kind of glance at nappies but not buy anything? What could we put together from this?
Absolutely. No. And look, I mean, there have already been cases in the US. There was a case a couple of years back, in fact, if I recall correctly, of Target in the US marketing to a family nappies and things like that because their own sales AI basically said, look, the likelihood is that the daughter in this family is pregnant. And they were right. That was the scary bit. Like, they hadn't realised it themselves. The daughter... I'm not sure if the daughter had not told the parents or if she wasn't aware of it herself either. But they'd gotten to that stage. This is like next level on that stuff. This is stuff that, as much as people might rail against the Coles and Woolies, this is stuff that they're not even starting to contemplate. I could totally see Amazon, because as you say, they're trialing this. And look, maybe it'll go nowhere. Maybe they'll just go, no, the costs outweigh the benefits and all the rest of it. But if it takes off, I could totally see Amazon saying, right, we won't launch physical retail in Australia till we can launch this. Till we can go, right, this solves those problems. Because if you look at the issues around Australian mass retail, there's all the logistics, we've discussed this before, there's all the logistics hurdles they've got to overcome. But at the same time, they've also got to overcome the fact that, for example, the minimum wage here is much higher than it is in the US.
Yeah.
And that drives the costs of goods up. And admittedly, it allows people to live. I actually don't have a big problem with the minimum wage for what it's worth. But that drives the costs of goods up. If Amazon can say, hey, look, all of this stuff is automated, people walk in and they walk out and they love it because they don't have to deal with waiting in supermarket checkout queues, they don't have to go bip, 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 unexpected item in the bagging lane, it all just works for them. I could totally see them saying, yeah, why spend, however many millions setting up traditional retail here when we can just wait, implement this stuff, and get all of our marketing data every single week and every single time that you realise at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. that you've got to rush out and buy some milk. Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Remember, if you've got any comments, hit us up in the comments section via Twitter, Facebook or YouTube.
Thanks for listening, and remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel.